Hello, and today we're going to talk about should I start a nonprofit? We've done a whole video series on how to start a nonprofit and how to grow your nonprofit, but we haven't talked much about the question of is it something that you should do or is something else better for you? This is based on an article by Laura Verson, one of our wonderful attorneys who serves nonprofits. I'm Mark Lyda from Lyda Law Firm. Let's get started. Okay, so at the very outset, what are we talking about when we say nonprofit? Really what we mean is informally a charity. And that means that it's something that is organized for the benefit of the public, not something that is organized for a profit. So it's not organized to make money for its owners or the people who run it. It is organized primarily for public good. So why would someone start a nonprofit? What are the benefits? Why not just start a private business and try to do good in the world? Well, the main reason really boils down to taxes, tax benefits. That's what you're going for with a nonprofit, is to achieve tax exempt status, which basically is a way of our government trying to incentivize private people to do good in the world, and by not taking a tax on the money that comes into nonprofits. Also think of taxes when you're thinking about raising money for your organization, because when, depending on your specific type of nonprofit, generally speaking, when somebody gives a donation to your nonprofit, it will be tax deductible for that donor. So there's some tax benefit to them for using their money for good. Okay, so those are the benefits. What are the downsides to starting a nonprofit? Well, paperwork, forms, legal requirements, all those sorts of headaches come with starting a nonprofit, especially as compared to just trying to go out there and do charitable good works as a private person. When you're actually creating that legal structure around being a nonprofit, there are many government restrictions and forms of oversight over a nonprofit, even more so than over many private businesses. So that's something that you'll be contending with. And so you've got to think, is it worth the trade-off when you think of the benefit, the tax benefits of starting a nonprofit as compared to all of the administrative burden of starting a nonprofit? Okay, so what are the alternatives to starting a nonprofit? You go through this thought process, you think about the benefits, and you think about the downsides. You go through kind of the who, what, when, and where of and why you're doing all of this. And you can watch our video series on how to start a nonprofit, where we talk about some of that as well. But after you've gone through that whole process, you might think, well, maybe a nonprofit might not be right for me. What other options are there? So one is to start small. I mean, the smallest you can start, like I said, is just doing private good works as a human being. But if you want some sort of legal structure around those good works, one way to start small is by having a fiscal agent or a fiscal sponsor, where essentially they're kind of like a parent organization for your startup nonprofit. And we talk about that in our nonprofit checklist as well in a bit more detail. Another thing you could do, if you're thinking about starting a nonprofit that's more like a foundation where you're giving money to other nonprofits and you're thinking of it as a vehicle for helping to fund other nonprofits, well, an alternative to that might be a donor-advised fund. So, for example, at a community foundation that's well-established and a little larger, you can often work with them to set up what's called a donor-advised fund, where maybe you want to make sure that more of your money is going directly to good works and not going to your own administrative burden or having to hire staff and so forth. You can usually do that at a lower dollar point, start a donor-advised fund within a community foundation, and then you have a say on where your money goes specifically and what causes you want to support. Another option is to start a for-profit business. You won't have necessarily the same tax benefits as a nonprofit, but there are other advantages. Some of them have a lower administrative and paperwork burden than a nonprofit would. Also, in a private business, you can make profit. So there's nothing wrong with making a profit while you're also having a positive social impact on society. If you are starting a private business that has a positive social impact or is a socially responsible business, depending on your state, there may be business entity types that you can choose from, like a public benefit corporation is a type of entity form where a lot of states allow that type of business to kind of bake the social responsibility into the company's DNA. You can also seek out private certification, like the B Corp certification, to kind of signal to the world that you are a socially responsible private business. So those are your options. You can just do good works. You can start small with a fiscal agent or a fiscal sponsor. You can start a full-on nonprofit. You can start a donor-advised fund at a community foundation, or you can start a socially responsible private business. So, hope you enjoyed watching. Those are some of the considerations you might think through when you're deciding whether to start a nonprofit and what your other options might be. Please remember to click like and subscribe to help keep legal education free and accessible for small business owners and nonprofits. And also check out our podcast, Coffee, Lunch, Beer. It's a fun, informal interview, mentorship-themed podcast, and it's available wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks.